Imagine stepping into a time machine made of silicon and code, where the year 1600 is rendered in 4000 resolution. London wasn't just a city back then. It was a digital heartbeat of 500,000 souls, a sprawling metropolis defined by the constant, rhythmic pulse of the River Thames. Welcome to Binary BC, your portal to the high-definition past. Subscribe to Binary BC now so you never miss a moment of our journey through the data streams of history. In the 17th century, London was a dense, fast-growing organism shaped by global trade and river traffic. At Binary BC, we use advanced AI reconstruction to take static paintings and ancient engravings, breathing life into them so we can shift perspective and move through these scenes in ways the original artists never imagined. Our first dataset focuses on the Old London Bridge, a structure that was far more than a simple river crossing. By the 1600s, this bridge was essentially a floating city district, a densely built street suspended over the water, linking the main city of London to Southwark. As we process these visuals, notice how the bridge is completely lined with houses, shops, and warehouses. It appeared less like infrastructure and more like a continuous neighborhood spanning the Thames. The bridge rested on massive stone piers that acted like a dam, constricting the tidal flow and creating terrifyingly powerful currents. Navigating a boat through these narrow arches was a deadly gamble. Accidents were common as the water surged and swirled beneath the residents' feet. People lived several stories high above the constant roar of carts and pedestrians, enduring the constant threat of fire and the suffocating congestion of the narrow roadway. This bridge was a commercial artery where local life collided with global trade. During severe winters, when the Thames froze solid, the area beneath these arches transformed into a frozen playground, a stark contrast to the dangerous currents of summer. By the mid-1700s, the bridge had deteriorated, and the buildings were eventually demolished, but through Binary BC, we can walk these crowded, dark corridors once again. Subscribe to Binary BC for more deep dives into lost architecture. We now transition to the western edge of the 17th century landscape to look at Buckingham House. Long before it became the world-famous Buckingham Palace, it was a private townhouse surrounded by open fields and sprawling gardens. At this time, it marked the boundary between the urban chaos of London and the quiet English countryside. It serves as a reminder that even as the city grew, its limits were once clearly defined by green space. But the most pivotal moment in our data stream is September 1666, the Great Fire of London. What began as a small blaze in a bakery quickly turned into an unstoppable force, devouring a city built almost entirely of timber. Our AI reconstruction shows Ludgate in flames, with the old St. Paul's Cathedral, a massive medieval landmark, threatened by the heat. By September 4th, as we look across the Thames from Tower Wharf, London appears as a solid wall of fire. The Tower of London narrowly escaped, but much of the medieval heart of the city was reduced to ash in days. Yet this destruction was a turning point. It forced London to delete its old, cramped layout and reboot, rebuilding with brick and stone to become the modern global hub we know today. Rising above the river, the Tower of London stood at the absolute center of royal authority. In the 1600s, it was a multifunctional complex, a fortress, an arsenal, a treasury, and a notorious prison. High-profile prisoners accused of treason were held within these walls, while the crown jewels and royal records were guarded deep inside. It was the cornerstone of the English state, representing both the protection and the power of the monarchy. Our AI now renders Cheapside in 1638, one of the city's most important ceremonial stages. We are processing the grand procession of Marie de Medici as she enters the city. Cheapside was lined with temporary structures and public crosses, serving as a theater for royal display. However, beneath the pageantry, the digital shadows reveal growing tension. The Queen's foreign origins and Catholic faith were unsettling a city already drifting toward civil war. Today, this stretch survives as a modern shopping district, but the medieval landmarks have long since vanished into the binary code of history. We move our focus to Westminster in 1647, a moment when the nation was deeply divided. On the left, we see the old Palace of Westminster, the seat of Parliament. By the mid-17th century, this was the focal point of the conflict between the crown and the people. Beside it stands Westminster Hall, its vast roof a symbol of authority, and to the right, Westminster Abbey, the spiritual heart where kings were crowned and buried. At the center are the Westminster Stairs, a busy landing where the elite arrived by boat. In this era, the Thames was the primary highway, carrying the architects of English democracy directly to the doorstep of power. Subscribe to Binary BC to explore more seats of power from across the globe. Next, we process the Palace of Whitehall in 1643, which was then the largest royal residence in Europe. Stretching along the river, Whitehall was a vast complex of administrative buildings and royal chambers. Kings and courtiers would arrive at these river-facing steps, underscoring the Thames as the main route for travel and political influence. Most of this palace was destroyed by fire at the end of the 17th century, leaving only the banqueting house as a final remnant of its former glory. Finally, we look at Richmond Palace, a favored retreat for the Tudor and Stewart monarchs. Built away from the crowded, unsanitary air of central London, it offered a peaceful riverside escape. It was here that Elizabeth I breathed her last in 1603, marking the end of the Tudor dynasty. Over time, the palace was dismantled, leaving only traces beneath the modern streets of Richmond. Standing here, looking back at these reconstructed moments, the past feels surprisingly close. These buildings and events are the foundation of our modern world. At Binary BC, we are dedicated to bringing these lost textures back to life. If there is another city, another century, or a specific historical event you want to see rendered in high definition, let us know in the comments. We are building this journey into the past together. Thank you for joining the stream. This is Binary BC, expanding the script further with deeper historical analysis and AI-focused descriptions to reach the desired length. As we dive deeper into the social fabric of 1600s London, our AI algorithms analyze the daily life of the common citizen. Beyond the palaces and bridges, London was a city of noise. The cries of London filled the air, vendors selling everything from fresh fish caught in the Thames to coal brought down from Newcastle. The streets were a sensory overload of horse hooves on cobblestones, the smell of wood smoke, and the constant chime of church bells. Our reconstruction of the Cheapside market shows the intricate detail of the stalls, the texture of the wool clothing, and the weathered faces of the merchants. The architecture of the time was a transition between the old timber-framed medieval houses and the emerging brick structures. We can see how the houses on London Bridge often leaned over the street, almost touching their neighbors on the opposite side, creating dark, tunnel-like passages. This density was the reason the Great Fire spread so rapidly. There was simply no space to breathe. Our AI has calculated the thermal intensity of that fire, visualizing how the heat would have felt as it hopped from one wooden beam to the next. We also examine the river's role as a cultural boundary. The Southwark side of the bridge, the South Bank, was known for its entertainment, theaters like the Globe, bear-baiting pits, and taverns. It was the playground of London, a place where the rules of the city were slightly more relaxed. By reconstructing the ferry crossings, we see how thousands of people would pay a waterman a few pennies to row them across the river, avoiding the congestion of the bridge. This was the gig economy of the 17th century, with thousands of boats swarming the water like digital pixels in a larger image. The political tensions we see at Westminster in 1647 are not just historical footnotes. They are the start of modern governance. Our AI highlights the figures moving between the palace and the abbey, lawyers in their black robes, soldiers in iron breastplates, and messengers carrying the latest decrees from King Charles I. This was a city on the brink of a revolution that would change the world forever. Through the lens of Binary BC, we don't just see the buildings, we see the pressure building within the city walls. As we look at the ruins of Whitehall and Richmond, we realize that London is a city that constantly deletes and overwrites itself. Very little of the 1600s survives in physical form today, which is why these AI reconstructions are so vital. They allow us to access a read-only version of a world that has been physically deleted. Every time-lapse we create, every texture we upscale, is a way of preserving the human experience from 4 centuries ago. If you value this digital preservation of our collective heritage, make sure you are subscribed to Binary BC. We are currently processing new data sets involving ancient Cairo, the Edo period in Japan, and the lost cities of the Maya. By supporting this channel, you are helping us build a comprehensive library of the human story. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can be the first to witness our next reconstruction. History is not just in the past, it's being rendered right now. This is Binary BC, where the past is always being updated. Stay tuned for more.